Take you to Maua. We have another one there. You use those. This one will be more shorter. The exit at the elevator here. However, this one is more convenient since you won't meet so many people. Are we together? Because so many guests are using this lift. So, security-wise, we advise that we use this one. There are less people. It will take you direct to Mukungu. While attending the meeting, kindly take care of your items, especially the phone, bag, and laptop. We also request that you put on your badge for us to be able to identify you. Before I wind up, we have got our washrooms for both ladies and gents well labeled. Through this door, it is directly far end. You will find well labeled for the ladies and gentlemen. If you have your car parked at the basement, we are not charging at the moment. Don't pay any parking fee to anyone. Our security guards will help you maneuver to the exit route while leaving. Thank you and have a productive meeting.
Thank you so much. At this point, allow me to invite Paul, who will guide us through the next phase of this workshop. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. Good morning. Good morning once again. I'll request, if you do not mind, that we try and fill up the tables closer to this side so that we are not too far away from one another. I hope you are okay with that. Tafadhali, please. All right? So, welcome, Kennedy. I believe you showed them how to get to the programs. Okay. Yeah. Please do that.
So sorry for that. Now, thank you, Paul. And you realize that we have tried to make this workshop as much paperless as possible, and you will not see any program workshop documents on your table. And to access those documents, the program, the workshop document, concept note, plus the project summary, you will scan a barcode on your name tag. Just check your name tag. You should be able to be on internet before you scan. So the password of the Wi-Fi, I think, was provided somewhere on your table. I think you just use your email address to log in to that Wi-Fi. Then if you don't have a barcode scanner, don't worry, just use the normal photo app, the photography app on your phone. You don't have to install a barcode scanner. Just use the normal photography app on your phone and scan that barcode on your name tag. It will lead you to the website for KCV, where you'll access the program, you'll access the concept note for this workshop, as well as some summary of the project that we are going to consult today about. Otherwise, feel much welcome, and back to Paul.
Thank you very much. By show of hands, have you been able to access your program so that we can then just quickly go through it? All right, everyone else? Okay, so it's accessible. Thank you very much. Karibuni sana and good morning. My name is Paul Mbole. I wear very many hats. One of them is that I'm a member of the KCIC board, which is a company related to KCV. And I'm glad to have this opportunity to be with you this morning. And for us, what we would like to do is, if you look at the program, you'll see we have scheduled this in a way that we finish by 1 o'clock. That's the ambition. But we'd like it to be a very engaging session. Our hope is that the interactions that we'll have in the group sessions after the presentations at 9:30, that they will be interactive to the extent that we can draw key info that we can use in finalizing the proposal that is being prepared. So we will be introducing you to a number of things. There will be a presentation or presentation done by by UNIDO, KCV, and Adelphi, who have been working on this particular application. And we will be able to get more info, and from that, when we go into our group work, we can be able to at least be able to interact and contribute effectively. Let me say, you are not here by accident. You are targeted to the extent that we need to hear from you. We need to have your input so that whatever application is being formulated, it can be enriched by inputs from your respective organizational perspective, so that we can see how that proceeds well. And for my colleagues, Madam Roba, Kisumu niendelee naye? Ni sawa? All right, let us be together. We want to be together in this particular engagement. So just without further ado, we will start with some few opening remarks, which we have scheduled in a certain way. We'll be asking Joseph Gadhangu, who's here to present for the PS. You'll be the last to present for protocol purposes. Then we'll have the others coming through. So Humphrey. Yes, Humphrey, karibu sana. He's a member of the investment committee for KCV. Karibu.
Yeah, good morning. All protocols observed. As KCV, we are glad to co-convene this conversation on climate adaptation investments, along with UNIDO, Adelphi, Finding XY Uganda. We have conceptualized a project which is envisaged to catalyze private sector investment into the adaptation SMEs in Kenya and Uganda. Today, stakeholders from the private and public sectors have come together to consult on how best to catalyze climate financing, climate investments, and how they can be applied to address climate resilience, gender and youth inclusion, growth of adaptation SMEs, alongside value creation by financial intermediaries. We appreciate the support from the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, which is the Adaptation Fund focal point in Kenya. The project, Unlocking Investments in Gender and Youth, Inclusive Early Growth Stage Adaptation SMEs in Kenya and Uganda, whose proposal is the subject of this convening, takes an innovative approach in piloting a catalytic finance facility to enable SMEs scale their business models and have the adaptation impact on highly vulnerable targeted groups. The proposed finance facility, in combination with targeted business and post-investment advisory support, is designed and is being validated through this convening today to help these SMEs to overcome the missing middle financing gap and related challenges to growth, so that they can replicate their business operations, grow, widen their reach in the deployment of adaptation solutions. in their respective communities. At the center of the proposed project, vulnerable communities will benefit from an increased access to targeted and context-specific adaptation solutions, substantially increasing their resilience to climate change. The project is designed to furthermore capacitate local financial intermediaries to gain a better understanding of adaptation solutions and technologies, and to raise their willingness and ability to provide tailored finance for adaptation businesses. Through its collaborative tenets, the project addresses both the finance supply, these are the financial actors, and demand side, the adaptation SMEs, to achieve transformational change in prevailing financing systems and mechanisms in the two countries, Kenya and Uganda. As KCV, having served the Kenyan market with risk capitalization of the climate smart enterprises, we are glad to ramp up our efforts collectively with private and public sector partners to contribute to climate resilient markets, enterprises, and communities. These collaborative efforts will go a long way in contributing to both countries' nationally determined commitments towards combating effects of climate change. I now take this moment, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce KCV Board of Directors and members of IC present, so that you can get to know them. Members present, I only see Charles. Charles Wasike, welcome. With those few remarks, I wish to hand this back over to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Humphrey. We really appreciate the role that KCV is playing on this. We do realize that the role, the place and the positioning of KCV is really strategic in the context of Kenya. And when you're looking at the issues, climate change, and I think the whole question of supporting SMEs that are operating in that space, where we are calling the adaptation SMEs, that's really a key part of what needs to be done. This is risk capital, and I think the work that we've seen with KCV has actually added value to a number of things that we are talking about. So without much ado, I will be asking, has John Karibu sana. Sorry, how are you doing? Karibu. Asante. Okay, all right.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is John Kabuya, and I'm here on behalf of KEPSA to give the opening remarks. Kenya Climate Ventures Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Victor Ndiege, the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, the National Treasury and Economic Planning, Climate Business Information Network Kenya members present, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, DANIDA, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, good morning once again. On behalf of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome you to the National Stakeholders Consultations Workshop on Climate Adaptation. This workshop is a critical milestone in our ongoing efforts to address the challenges of climate change and build a sustainable future for our country. I represent KEPSA in this meeting, and briefly, as some of you know, KEPSA is the apex body of the private sector in Kenya, bringing together local and foreign businesses and business associations, federations, chambers of commerce, professional bodies, corporates, including multinationals, large and medium-sized corporates, SMEs, and startups from all sectors of the economy. KEPSA is a federation of over 100 business associations and professional bodies with a reach of 1 million businesses locally and over 45 million businesses globally through our membership of International Chamber of Commerce, ICC Kenya chapter. In the East Africa region, KEPSA serves as the national focal point of the East Africa Business Council and engages closely with peer apex bodies in the ESCU region to resolve any emerging business issues as well as to promote trade and investment. These platforms enable KEPSA to consolidate the businesses' views to speak with one voice when engaging government, development partners, and other stakeholders of cross-cutting policy issues affecting private sector development. KEPSA also implements programs and projects that ensure social economic development of the country, including climate change, sustainable inclusive business, SMEs, youth employment, women and youth empowerment project. Permit me to applaud the partnership between the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, the Kenya Climate Ventures, and Adelphi, and all the partners for their dedication to cause of preparing a project on unlocking investment in gender and youth inclusive, early growth stage adaptation, small and medium-sized enterprises in Kenya and Uganda under the Adaptation Fund's Innovation Funding window. The role of KEPSA in advancing business and climate action. In line with our strategic business agenda, KEPSA is the coordination platform on business climate action in Kenya. We established the Climate Business Information Network Kenya as the national engagement platform between government and private sector in implementing and reporting of climate action in Kenya. We believe that businesses that prioritize climate resources, business that prioritize climate resilience and sustainability are not only good for the environment, but also for the bottom line, as they are better equipped to adapt to changing environmental conditions and meet the needs of their customers. KEPSA has been actively involved in advancing climate adaptation measures in Kenya. Some of the work KEPSA has done in advancing climate action with a focus on adaptation include Kenya Climate Innovation Center. KEPSA is a founding partner of the Kenya Climate Innovation Center that promotes climate innovation and entrepreneurship in Kenya through incubation, financing, and capacity building services to startups and SMEs in the climate technology. Climate smart agriculture. KEPSA has been promoting climate smart agricultural practices among its members as a way of enhancing food security and building climate resilience. This has been done through training and capacity building programs, as well as advocacy for policies that support climate smart agriculture. Green energy. KEPSA has been promoting the adoption of renewable energy technologies among its members as a way of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and promoting sustainable development. This has been done through advocacy for policies that support renewable energy, as well as capacity building programs on renewable energy technologies. Policy and regulatory input. KEPSA has been involved as a task force member in the development of the National Climate Change Action Plan, both 1 and 2, leading to the integration of private sector perspectives in priority sectors and reporting on progress of implementing of climate change solutions. Number 2, coordination mechanism. In 2020, the support of the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, the National Treasury and Economic Planning, and FAO, KEPSA established the Climate Business Information Network, CBINK, to help private sector actors in Kenya integrate climate change considerations into their operations and strategies. CBINK coordination mechanism links to the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry and the National Climate Change Council. Through CBINK, KEPSA provides training and technical assistance to private sector actors on how to assess and manage climate risks and opportunities, as well as how to develop and implement low carbon and climate resilient business models. The network also facilitates access to financing and investment opportunities for climate-smart projects and initiatives. Number 3, adaptation, climate change, and MSMEs. The private sector, including SMEs, is a key stakeholder in climate change solutions, given their importance in providing livelihoods, creating goods and services that support adaptation and financing. Private sector assets, operations, and supply chains are a significant risk for mitigating, are a significant risk arising from climate change. In a study undertaken by KEPSAR titled Business Case for Investment in Climate Change, indicated that most of the investments in climate change are carried out by large enterprises, leaving out micro, small, and medium enterprises, smallholder farmers, fishermen, artisanal miners behind. Some of the barriers impacting SMEs' ability to invest in climate-proof include capacity constraints, climate science information gaps, weak financial markets, lack of capacity to develop bankable projects, policy and regulatory constraints. With an increased ambition of Kenya's national determined contributions to 32% relative to the business as usual scenario of 143 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, private sector and especially the SMEs will have to manage risks associated with climate change, capitalize on new market opportunities in the climate crisis, and work to comply with new regulatory requirements and investor interests. In conclusion, this workshop is an opportunity strengthening partnerships for private sector, especially SMEs, climate premiership for youth and women-owned businesses, and to forge stronger pillars to support business climate action in Kenya and Uganda. In conclusion, KEPSA, as a strategic partner to this process, we are confident that today's deliberations will be productive and will help to further shape the proposal as well as advance our shared goal of building a more sustainable future for our country. Once again, welcome, and we look forward to a fruitful workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, John. We appreciate the support that we've received from KEPSA and our continued engagement. So, karibuni sana. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to our development partners. And maybe it's fair that we recognize the presence of development partners and multilateral agencies. Maybe Lynette, just stand up, we see you, please. Those that are from development partners or any UN agency, all right. Thank you very much. Karibuni sana, asante sana. We'll be talking to you later. So we'll be inviting Charles Wasike from Danida, Danish Embassy. Danida is actually a funding partner to Kenya Climate Ventures. So, Bwana Charles, tafadhali.
All protocols observed. Good morning. What Paul didn't tell you is that just the other year, he was my colleague. Okay, as he has said, I'm Charles Wasike. I work for the Embassy of Denmark, and I'm in charge of all our interventions in agriculture and financing of climate innovations. The intervention of any development player in any country is always guided by a framework. Now, the intervention of Denmark in Kenya is currently guided by a framework called Denmark-Kenya Strategic Framework 2021-2025. So that is what is currently guiding all the development intervention of Denmark into Kenya. Now, under that framework, there are 3 thematic areas. So the first thematic area is green, sustainable, and inclusive growth. And then the second thematic area is democratic governance, human rights, and equitable access to services. And the last thematic area is resilience, peace, and stability. Now, for the purpose of today's discussion, we'll focus on the first thematic area, that is green, sustainable, and inclusive growth. And right from the wording, I think you can see how Denmark is aligned to what we are discussing today. I think the contribution of Denmark into green agenda, that cannot be gainsaid. Just to give a few examples, for those of you who know Kenya Climate Innovation Center, the government of Denmark is among the founders of Kenya Climate Innovation Center. And just as Paul said, the government of Denmark is also the founder of Kenya Climate Ventures, who are among the conveners of today's meeting. So Denmark really has great commitment and ambitious targets when it comes to green. And then on inclusion, we have two phases of inclusion. The first phase is the equity phase. And the equity phase is about the principle of leave no one behind. If men are there, the women also have to be there. If the old are there, the young also have to be there. So under equity agenda, we leave no one behind. And in climate perspective, the understanding in equity agenda is that different strata of the society have been affected differently with climate change. And as we go about that agenda, we need to appreciate that fact. I'll give a case. One time before I joined the embassy, I worked for a biogas program. And it was a regional program covering 5 countries. So one time I visited Uganda, and I went to this household. They had a biogas unit, and I had some interaction with the wife and the husband. So throughout the interaction, so we went, we saw the cows, we saw the biogas facility, we went up to the kitchen, we lit the biogas, the blue flames came. But throughout the conversation, the lady was quiet. So it's the husband who was talking throughout. So that drew my attention. So I looked for an opportunity for me to have a confidential one-on-one with the lady. And then the lady told me, my son, let me just be open. I'm not happy about this biogas unit, because I never get to use the gas. And the reason is, my husband is always insisting that if I use the gas, the pressure reduces and the bioslurry does not come out. So he has really restricted the use of the biogas. I think for those of us who understand the dome-shaped biogas, it's hydraulic in nature. So when the pressure builds up, then it pushes the dung down and the bioslurry comes out. So you can see this household, the woman is interested in the gas, and the man is interested in the bioslurry. So that is a good case of how climate change affects us differently, and we have different interests. So that is the equity agenda. And we have always to ensure that we bring it on board. The other phase is the performance agenda. And the performance is, when we are talking about inclusion, what is the added value? And the added value could be either to improve the performance of the sector or to improve the performance of the business. And I'll explain using examples. I'll still use the biogas program. So when we were carrying out evaluation at the end of the year, we established that the highest number of non-functional plants was in Burkina Faso. So I decided to go there myself. So I went, I interacted with the community, and then one thing I came to realize is that Burkina Faso is highly, highly polygamous. So during my interaction, I came to realize when it came to siting of the biogas plant, that is where the biogas unit will be constructed, it was the man to make the decision. And among his wives, he chose to install it to the house of the wife that he loves most. And the rest of the wives felt jealous. I don't know where they got the understanding that the moment you pour soap into the biodigester, it stops producing gas. So that is what was happening in most of the families. So the other wives were colluding. So once you've done all your technical aspects, you leave, and then the other wives collude. When the other one is not around, they go and pour soap. And that took place in so many of the households. So you can see, because of overlooking the aspect of inclusion, you can see the performance of the sector has been affected. So what we decided is that to include an aspect of always before an agreement is reached where the biogas unit will be installed, there has to be a family roundtable. And actually we dealt with the problem once and for all. So that is when it comes to the performance of the sector. What about the performance of the business? So when it comes to the performance of the business is when we drive the inclusion agenda, it has to make commercial sense, or else it will not be sustainable. In the same biogas program, I remember we had the gender dimension, and one of it was to train as many women masons as possible and help them build their entrepreneurial capacity, and even supporting them in setting up companies. So one thing we came to realize that when we were looking at our data, almost all the women masons who had set up their companies, almost all their employees were men. So we were asking ourselves, okay, we thought by having supported you as a woman, you will also support other women to come along with you. So when we interacted with them, they said, initially that is actually where I started from. But you have to understand that the biogas construction is highly, highly a manual process. So when I employed many ladies, I saw my performance going down. So that's why I decided slowly by slowly to start changing and having more men because of the manual aspect of the construction. So you can see, yes, the end game was good, but to these lady masons, it was not really making business sense because it was affecting the business performance of their enterprises. So for us, that is how we look at inclusion. We have to have a holistic aspect of inclusion, the equity and the performance aspect, and also in the performance aspect, we have to look at those two aspects. Otherwise, I think from that brief you can see how much the government of Denmark is aligned to what you are doing, and as ever, always count on our support in this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bwana Charles. We appreciate the support that we've received from our colleagues in the development partners, and we really appreciate the continued support. I think the matters climate change and working with SMEs, or even supporting that whole aspect of appropriating, whether it is the financing, whether it is the programming, these become very critical aspects. So we appreciate the inputs that Charles has given, and we'll now invite Lynette Luvai to come and share something as UNIDO. UNIDO is also the lead and the focal point for the Adaptation Fund in country, and therefore they are the ones who are helping the team put together the application. Karibu sana, Lynette.
Thank you so much, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. My name is Lynette Luvai. I work at UNIDO, the UN Industrial Development Organization in Kenya, as the deputy representative. And it is my pleasure to be here this morning at today's stakeholder consultation workshop on the proposed Unlocking Investments in Gender and Youth Inclusive Early Growth Stage Adaptation SMEs in Kenya and Uganda project. The project is in line with UNIDO's mandate, which is to promote inclusive and sustainable industrial development in the countries of operation. This includes working with partners to identify opportunities for our member states to create ecosystems that support green industrial development. We believe that to truly accelerate the climate agenda, developing and emerging economies need to be fully engaged, and their adaptation capacities to climate change also needs to be further strengthened. It is against this backdrop that we have been involved in designing this project that seeks to fulfill the potential of adaptation SMEs to provide cost-effective and localized adaptation solutions to vulnerable communities in Kenya and Uganda. Through the project, we aim to influence transformational change in local financial markets in Kenya and Uganda, making the financial markets more inclusive and working with stakeholders to innovate inclusive climate adaptation solutions. The project also proposes to showcase bankable adaptation SME business models, which is expected to have a positive spillover effect, including developing market opportunities for SMEs and creating new avenues for adaptation SMEs to grow and scale their business models. UNIDO is therefore pleased to collaborate with the government of Kenya, the Kenya Climate Venture, Adelphi, and other key stakeholders in the development of this project. And as I conclude, we therefore wish you all productive and engaging deliberations and look forward to your recommendations on the finalization of the project design. We commit to incorporating your feedback, which we are confident will enrich the final product. Asanteni sana.
Another clap, please. Thank you very much. Just before I go to the next person, who will be Bwana Joseph, just to inform you that Lynette has, she would have loved to have her for the whole day, but she's having a mission she's preparing for. We have the Director General is coming into Kenya. So there's a lot of, there's a preparatory meeting that's going to be happening from 10:30. So Lynette, unfortunately, will not be with us for that part of the day, but I trust we will be able to give you the feedback that will come from the team that is in attendance. So asanteni sana, thank you very much for your time, and we continue to look forward to the support. Now, I'll be calling upon, we were to have the Director Climate Change, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Dr. Pacifica, who's traveled with the CS to, they're actually in Denmark. They went to Sweden and they went over to Denmark. And unfortunately, we were to have her virtually, but somehow we've seen the logistics are a bit of a problem. So we will just go straight and invite Joseph Gadhangu, the Deputy Director of Industries, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, who will give us some remarks and also the speech from the PS, I believe. And may we request that you formally open it for us. Tafadhali, asante.
Good morning. My name is Joseph Gadhayo, not Gadhangu. And I'm here to represent the PS industry, Ms. Dr. Juma Mugwana. I have his speech, which I read for you. Good morning. I'm pleased to represent the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry to welcome you all to the event of the Unlocking Investment in Gender and Youth Inclusive Early Growth Stage Adaptation, Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises in Kenya and Uganda project. As you are aware and experiencing, Kenya is facing significant climate hazards due to climate change and variability, such as rising temperatures, shifting precipitation patterns, and increasing extreme events. For example, droughts and floods. Between 1961 and 2005, Kenya has experienced a temperature increase of 0.8 to 1.2 degrees. Over 70% of the natural disasters in Kenya are attributable to extreme climate events. Between 1998 to 2000, droughts cost an estimated $2.8 billion in Kenya. In a nutshell, Kenya is vulnerable to droughts, is vulnerable to climate change with current projection and expected average temperatures increase of 1.8 to 3 degrees by 2050 in Kenya. These changes suggest more intense and less predictable rainfall, impacting water resources, agriculture, productivity, and food security, livestock, health, and forestry sectors, thereby affecting women and youth mainly. A major setting targets of vulnerable to climate change in Kenya is the agricultural sector, which contributes to 23.05% of GDPs and employ 80% of the population. Agriculture production is central to Kenya's socio-economic success. Climate change is expected to shrink important crop production areas. Yields may decline, affect all dimensions of food and security available, access, utilization, and stability, especially affecting the communities and regions more exposed to climate hazards. Recognizing the importance of adaptation capacities to climate change, Kenya has prioritized reducing the vulnerability of these sectors to climate change with with a focus on highly vulnerable groups such as smallholders, farmers, and households. As such, promoting public-private partnership and private investment in climate adaptation and sensitization of the private sector on climate impact and opportunities. In Kenya, about 7.41 million SMEs contributed that 3.8% of GDP in 2015, with 14.9 billion people engaged. We fully recognize the potential role of adaptation. MSMEs in supporting the large-scale deployment of adaptation technologies, products, and services, and have supported many accelerators and incubators that have transformed into early growth, adaptation, MSMEs in the market. However, we are still facing severe challenges to sustain growth and replicate their businesses model due to shortages in available capital. In light of these challenges, the project aimed at increasing vulnerable groups' climate change resilience through fostering and scaling commercially viable adaptation solutions offered by SMEs, thereby generating positive and sustainable economic extensions, particularly benefiting vulnerable groups that are integrated in SMEs value chains. Ladies and gentlemen, we are sitting here today to discuss the problems, propose solutions, and work together to address the above challenges. Your wisdom and contribution are highly appreciated. The Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry is therefore supportive of this proposed project and looks forward to engaging in its development, finalization, and subsequent implementation. Asante sana, as we declare the workshop open. Thank you.
Thank you, Bwana Director. And the name is? Thank you. Sorry, we apologize for that error in the naming, but we really appreciate the remarks by the Deputy Director. This indeed puts this thing squarely where it belongs. We really appreciate the alignment. The fact that the ministry appreciates the impact of climate change, and I think this is critical. If agriculture is contributing 23%, and the climate reality is such that even agriculture is at jeopardy, what does that then mean? So we really feel what you have put through, and I think it puts squarely for all of us who are here to appreciate that it is our role. The challenge is back to us to see how then can we enable the facility that is being talked about to indeed meet the aspirations as articulated by the ministry. So we look forward to the engagement, and I would dare say, remember that's only agriculture. What about the transport related to agriculture? What about the industry that is related to agriculture? So if agriculture crashes, all that chain is affected. So we have to be really, we need to put on the thinking hat here, and we need to think outside the box, yes? So that we then can contribute the ideas that will help this particular application actually have the kind of traction that can actually contribute to the engagement that's been said here. So without much ado, we will now go to see what is the proposed intervention, how has it evolved where it is, and hopefully then in our group discussions we can go then interact and kind of thresh out what are then the angles that your inputs can help and reach so that by the time we conclude, we have something that indeed meets the aspirations that we set for ourselves. So I will be inviting our CEO to actually take us, Victor, to take us through this. And then from there, Victor, you can also guide us on matters group. But even before group, tea will also be served. I know you may have wondered why we have not given a tea break. The break will be on your way to the group, okay? We are trying to be conscious of the time because we only have a morning, and that morning we have to try and see how well we can fit into all this. So thank you very much. Karibu, Victor.
Thanks a lot, Paul, and I'm glad that today has presented an opportunity for me to meet some of my former colleagues who have also been my friends for a very long time, but because we keep moving, you know, sometimes different directions, I don't want to say socially, but work related, we have not been able to meet as such. So, you know, for the last now 1.5 years, if I want to be very precise, we have been thinking very hard about what we can do for the adaptation SMEs here in Kenya in the context of how do we catalyze more financing into this space. And we are aware that there are already a lot of interventions that are happening in the market, some of which are market-based and some of which are not market-based. And so alongside UNIDO, Adelphi, and Finding XY. Finding XY is not here because they're also going through the same process in Uganda so that they get the mandate of stakeholders and they try to validate what we are trying to put forward for the final round of the Adaptation Fund Board that is coming up in October. So we really have to, you know, put our feet together to see that the outcome of the October board is actually favorable for not only KCV, UNIDO, and Finding XY and Adelphi, but also for the rest of the stakeholders who are in the room today. So I had a PowerPoint presentation, which of course will come up shortly. But before then, I just want to mention that both countries, Kenya and Uganda, are not very different in terms of the challenges they face. And these challenges are related to the effects of climate change in many sectors. And so for this project, we have some sector focus, but we also open it up to sectors that are adversely affected by effects of climate change. And so we thought that if we put together a proposal that is covering the region, then we are able to address also the cross-country trade amongst small and medium enterprises, which many of you may agree with me that has not been a great focus when we are talking about, you know, commercialization of adaptation enterprises. So as much as we face the same problems across border, it has never been emphasized as one of the areas that can really be, you know, organized and that can be coordinated across the region. So we are looking for $5 million USD. I think that should be clear for all the stakeholders who are here, that we are looking for $5 million USD. And the lead in this project is actually UNIDO, both UNIDO Kenya and also UNIDO in Vienna. And that KCV, Finding XY, Adelphi, and the other stakeholders who are here today and whose, you know, contributions will go into the final document that is presented to the Adaptation Fund will then form the partnership that has been, you know, all over framed as executing entities. So there will be levels of executing entities, you know, with the leadership of KCV in Kenya and also with the leadership of Finding XY in Uganda, with the overall leadership of UNIDO. We'll be able to work with all of us who are here today and some of who are not here today to be able to deliver a 5-year project that the outcome is actually to improve how we respond to climate change in a more market-based manner. So the first partner and the leading partner, UNIDO, I will give Lynette. Fortunately, or it's not unfortunate, fortunately Lynette has a lot to present today. So I will give Lynette an opportunity to come and give us an overview. I am sure we know about UNIDO, but she will tell us, what programs are now running in Kenya and how those programs are aligned to the proposal that we are trying to make to the Adaptation Fund, and how that relates to the cohort of stakeholders that we have invited for this meeting today. So, Lynette, if you can take the floor. And I think at this point we need to project the presentation. I think people have seen my face enough, so they want to see the face of the presentation as well. All right, so we can go to the next slide, that is UNIDO at a glance, and Lynette will begin from there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Victor, for that introduction. I will just give a brief about UNIDO. I'll be quite brief. I only have 3 slides on that. So next slide, please. In terms of UNIDO, as I had said earlier, UNIDO is a specialized UN agency that supports inclusive, sustainable industrial development in our countries of operation. We really align to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and within that we contribute specifically to SDG number 9, which is on industry, innovation, and infrastructure. In the countries we operate, we make sure we align to the national priorities, therefore very much speaking to the various policies and strategies of that country. We are a technical cooperation agency, so our entry point is really around technical issues, building capacity, providing advisory services. And in this regard, we therefore support governments in terms of the analytical research and policy advisory services. We also play a convening function, such as today, where we are able to work with key stakeholders to bring various partners to the table, with government, other development partners, private sector, academia, etc. Our approach is anchored around building multi-stakeholder partnerships in recognition that no one actor is able to address systemic challenges that are found in countries with a focus on industrial issues. So we are very big on convening function, partnerships, building partnerships, and creating networks. We also have a huge normative role in the industrial space. So really looking at issues around standards, looking at global standards and how this can cascade down to national standards, looking at issues around compliance as well. So within that, we seek to contribute to creating shared prosperity. We also look at advancing economic competitiveness, strengthening knowledge and institutions, and safeguarding the environment. So very much also you can see that how this project very much aligns to our key themes, especially around the issue around safeguarding the environment. So that is globally. Next slide. When we come to Kenya, specifically in Kenya, what are we doing? So in Kenya, our work towards supporting the government is highlighted or described in our 5-year programmatic framework, which we call the Program for Country Partnership. So this is our programmatic framework that was signed in 2021 and so guides our work for the next 5 years. Our key counterpart is the Ministry of Industry. And so what we are doing with the PCP is really looking to accelerate Kenya's industrial agenda as outlined in the Kenya Industrial Transformation Program. And so the PCP, therefore, in country is aligned to various national policies, and I've given some examples such as the Vision 2030. We've been aligned to the MTP3, and as you are all aware, the government is finalizing the MTP4. So we have also ensured that we are aware of, what's in the MTP4, and we are aligning with that, even as the government finalizes that. Very much also aligned with the National Industrialization Policy, and having discussions with the Ministry of Industry in terms of supporting the review of this policy, and aligned with also other key policies such as the Kenya National Trade Policy, the investment policy, the MSC policy, the agriculture sector growth transformation strategy, etc. But our point of departure really is fast-tracking implementation of the Kenya Industrial Transformation Plan, which is what we do on a day-to-day basis, working very closely and supporting closely the Ministry of Industry to do this. Our key stakeholders in terms of implementation of the Program for Country Partnership is varied. We take a multi-stakeholder approach. Our key stakeholders include the national government and the various ministries that are involved in matters industry, recognizing that industry is a really cross-cutting issue. So working closely with the Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Agriculture, of Energy, of Environment, and really taking a multi-ministry approach. We are also working closely with county governments and the COG, Council of Governors. Private sector is key to our work, so we engage very closely with the umbrella organizations, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, KEPSA, Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, ASNET, the Agriculture Sector Network, and others, but also making those partnerships with individual private sector companies as well. Also key are the financial institutions. Development partners, working closely with those across the board, both bilateral and multilateral partners, and also in terms of thought leadership, engaging with academia and research. Our priority areas that we're supporting the government in is around industrial policy and governance, ICT and digitalization, recognizing the importance of leveraging this to further the industrial agenda. Also very keen on supporting industrial zones, and we are aware that the government has taken this up very strongly, and we are in discussions with governments as to how to actualize their ambition of having county aggregation and industrial parks in each county in Kenya. So we are working with government to think through, work with them to think through the best model around this, so that it's efficient, it's effective, and we don't have white elephants across various counties. We are also working around the blue economy, agro-processing, very key as well, with a focus across various value chains, including cotton and textiles, leather, and other value chains. Trade and investment promotion, very key, also in recognition that industrial matters really require a lot of investment, and a lot of that investment is driven by the private sector. So taking a public-private partnership approach in this. Green industry, looking at issues around climate and greenhouse gas emissions across industry. And finally, the inclusive bit, looking at how to integrate youth and women in all the projects that we carry out. So just to give you a flavor, as I conclude on some of the programs that we are currently engaged in, Around the energy portfolio, we do have projects that look at sustainable conversion of waste into clean energy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We've also been supporting the Kenya Generation Electricity Company in terms of improving the efficiency in electricity generation, clean electricity generation, I might add, through leveraging the Internet of Things technology. We are also supporting farmers and various institutions to build their capacities and promote the export of key value chains into the EU and ESC market, and this we call the EU ESC markup program that is funded by the EU. One of our flagship projects around industrial parks is supporting the establishment of Nyamira Integrated Agro-Industrial Parks, and within this we have undertaken a feasibility study, and currently, the Nyamira County is undertaking an environment and social impact assessment, and also undertaking work to do the architectural drawings. And this is where the work around supporting the government's agenda in terms of the county aggregation and industrial parks is also related. We are also doing some work around investment promotion, and here working with Kenya Investment Authority and the World Bank and ITC to look at supporting business-friendly and inclusive policies and strengthening the ability of Kenya Investment Authority to attract and promote investment in the country. And just recently we launched another program that looks at incubating SMEs through a public-private partnership approach in terms of building the capacities of SMEs to achieve scale and expand their operation. And this is in collaboration with an Italian development agency and leveraging on the work of an ongoing program that is called the E4 Impact Program. So that is, I think that gives you a flavor of what we are working in, and certainly UNIDO is very pleased to be involved in the co-creation of this project that we are discussing today that really aligns with our work in Kenya. So thank you, and over to you.
Thanks, Lynette. You've made my work a lot easier. And let's have the KCV slides so we can progress with that. So I will introduce to you KCV, and I also want to mention that we have a colleague who is representing Adelphi in this meeting. We'll give an opportunity to also, tell you what Adelphi does and what they have done in Kenya also before, and how that fits into the project that we are talking about today. But on behalf of Paul, I think I want to mention that the front seats are, which are not occupied, are open, so those who are coming in now can move in front. Paul, we are allowed to do that, right? Okay, thanks. Let's have the slides on KCV. So KCV, I will give the background. KCV started in 2016. And as Charles already mentioned, we started as a program of the World Bank, seeded by Danida and UKAID. And during that time, I think the pioneering fact was that there were a lot of small and medium enterprises in the climate space which were graduating from the incubators and the accelerators and did not quite find a place to get concessional commercial financing that can then define their growth going forward. And as we are aware, the financial sector in Kenya and of course in East Africa is still not very much ready for small and medium enterprises in the context that, a lot of collateral is required, a lot of screening that do not actually respect the growth of this in the sector, mostly climate change, are not very streamlined. So Many of those, and if I'm not wrong, there are over 150, incubators and accelerators in Kenya. Each of them are churning about 20 to 50 enterprises almost on an annual basis. And if you sum up that over the years, what it means is that there are a lot of startups, small and medium enterprises, which are getting into the market. And so there's need to have a very focused and targeted attention in terms of what kind of capital do they get. So KCV was actually designed to be able to provide that concessional capital packaged with technical assistance and business growth. So over the years, the next slide, over the years we have supported the ecosystem in several ways. And I just want to show you in the next slide that where KCV fits. So we are not working on our own, and hence is the reason we have everybody in this forum today. So if you look at the climate financing space, for example, I have already mentioned that there are a lot of companies, a lot of institutions that are churning out catalytic grants to various enterprises. At some point, these enterprises need a more commercial intervention, but they cannot be able to pick money directly, maybe from the banks, maybe because of high interest rates, requirements for collaterals. So there's need to bridge that gap that then exists between, conventional commercial lenders and the catalytic grant financing that they get from accelerators and incubators. And that is the gap that KCV fills. So all through, we provide capital to both early and growth stage enterprises in the market. And so we have defined ourselves as the organization or the facility that then fills the valley of death. And most of you have understood that when you start an enterprise, it reaches a point when you can no longer be classified as a startup, neither are you established and you have grown. So at that time, there is nobody who is really paying attention to you. When you go to the grant providers, they look at you as one who is ready for commercial capital. When you go for commercial capital, there are certain criteria that you cannot meet. One of them is just demonstrating that you have handled credit, which is a big thing for most of the enterprises. So that gap, about 80% of enterprises then fail and die out. So what do we do during that gap? At that gap, then we provide concessional capital. Then businesses begin to grow, and it reaches a point where, the question then becomes, how much money can you absorb as a business? So this is the question about ticket sizes. And as you are aware, most DFIs are providing very large ticket sizes, which some of these growing enterprises can never justify that they can actually absorb. And most of the capital providers at that stage then would ask you, to what extent are you able to give us the returns that require within the time that we need to? And most of you private sector players who are in the market and who are here now, you can attest to the fact that, when you are starting a business, you are putting in money, but you really don't know whether it will bring in as much money in the time that you really need to get it back. So you cannot really commit to a commercial investor and tell them that after 5 years, I will return your money. So some of the small enterprises, they have taken the money, but investors have burnt their fingers. And so they are very hesitant to go to the risky enterprises. So at that stage, then KCV grows with you, provide you another layer of capital so that you are ready, and you are ready to uptake the large ticket sizes. So that's why you see me in the lower illustration running through in some black attire. That is actually myself trying to connect the valleys, so that our enterprises are ready for large ticket capital providers. The next slide. So over the years we have invested. So I said we were piloting this for the first 3 years. And then for the most recent 3 years, we have invested, made a total of 22 investments. Out of the 22 investments, we have, successfully exited 4. So that's a track record for us. And we now have about 18 enterprises that are still undergoing through our financing and business growth support. And there's one important fact that I want to say about this, and this is the reason that we then came together to be able to design this program, that capacity building and investment readiness support is one of the most important things for enterprises to be able to grow, leave alone money. The ability to use that money and grow the enterprise, to us, is a valuable aspect of how we need to support enterprises. And so every time we are discussing, you know, we sit to discuss, and the KCV team is here, why probably a business is not performing properly. It's not because they cannot sell their products, but it's because their capacity to meet the demand that is in the market and their ability to be able to reach out to their customers in an effective way and manage their cost properly is lacking. And so most importantly, we would provide capital. For example, you'd go to a bank, you'd provide capital, but the fact will still remain, if you don't have the ability to deploy, you are creating problems. And that is one of the key aspects of our investment package. So that is an area that we want to look at with this project, and that is the reason why we are saying we want to unlock more capital for adaptation SMEs. Us providing capital, but also leveraging more capital from both the private sector, impact investors, and those who are providing catalytic grants to be able to drive this forward. The next one is about, the next slide is about our impact, which of course partly I've spoken to, but I think the most important aspect that we get from this combination of impact is the fact that environmental indicators are important because they define to what extent we are able to achieve, you know, the climate investment and climate, you know, resilience goals. Also, how people and communities benefit from our products and services is important because those are our customers, those are your customers. When they buy, you make money and you return our money. So that's very important, and that's why we track that. The other important bit is what Lynette spoke about, that they are trying also to stimulate green energy, the development of green energy sources and the distribution of green energy. So that's a very important aspect, and that's why we continue to invest in that sector as well. So we continue to invest in sectors that also facilitate business. An example is when you visit most of the rural places, one of the biggest problems, if there is a power line, then the power is not reliable. If the power is reliable, then the tariff is just too high for a small and medium enterprise. And when the prices are high, it means the cost of your products and services would also be high for your clients. So that's the reason we also try to promote that. In most of the indicators that we'll talk about thereafter, you will see that emerging very much. So with all that, I think it is then an opportunity to introduce the next partner, which is Adelphi. Julia traveled yesterday to join us in this event. And so she will take time speaking about Adelphi, and then I will return then now to give you the flavor of how the project has been designed, and then that will inform the contributions that you will give during the group work. Julia, karibu.
Thank you so much, Victor. Okay, hello everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. As Victor mentioned, I traveled here yesterday, and actually on my way here I was thinking back on when I was last time in Kenya, and that was actually 10 years ago, because it is that long, even longer. I think we've been working in Kenya for 15 years now, supporting entrepreneurs. I've also conducted workshops myself. I just remembered a workshop with rural female smallholder farmers who were also already back then, 10 years ago or 11 years ago, prone by droughts, and they were then changing to planting aloe vera plants as an adaptation mechanism. So I think, the issue we have with climate change has been there for some time already. And this is also why we are putting together this project, and I'm really happy to be here to discuss it with you, to get your insights, because we want to build something that's really anchored locally. We don't want to build new structures, setting up new systems that then die again when the project ends, but we really want to see how we can best anchor it in the existing environment. So maybe a few words on my organization. So My name is Julia Rohe Friedrich. I'm from Adelphi. We call ourselves a think and do tank, actually. We are based in Germany. Our headquarters are in Berlin. And we were founded in 2001 already, and think and do tank because, we actually do engage a lot of also in research, conducting feasibility studies and so on, but we also do implementation on the ground. So as I was mentioning, the enterprise support projects we have conducted, for instance, here in Kenya and also the wider region. So we have grown quite a lot. I've been with the organization for 15 years almost. So now we are almost 300 people. We are also quite diverse. So we have about 27 different nationalities under our roof, and we try to work on the pressing political, economic, and social challenges, but all somehow connected to the environment, climate issues that are out there. And we are working worldwide, just to mention this as well, for a plethora of different clients and partner organizations. And this is also how we came across UNIDO and our partners here, Kenya Climate Ventures and Finding XY in Uganda, putting together this specific project. So can we move to the next slide, please? So here you see a bit the areas we're engaging in. So I was mentioning climate, of course, as probably the focus one, you could call it. Energy, also very much related. We do also work in climate diplomacy, but also in the area of finance, which is also something that we touch upon here in this project. As Victor mentioned, we are also not just supporting entrepreneurs at Adelphi, but we are also working on that interface with financial institutions. We have a current project running in Uganda, which is trying to match commercial banks with entrepreneurs, green entrepreneurs, in order to facilitate loans. These loans are then blended with EU money. So there are different mechanisms out there, I think, and I think this project is also an opportunity to see what actually works, what maybe is there a new approach we can try. I think, we have a lot of flexibility here also to see what is actually effective. And then other two topics here mentioned, resources and economy. Then maybe next slide. So I think it's not that well visible on the slide, but here just a few of our partners we are working with. So as you can see, it's mainly international organizations from the finance space, so development finance institutions. We currently do a lot for an European Investment Bank, for instance, but we are also, as a German organization, naturally also working for German ministries and German development cooperation. Then next slide. Our global activities. I think I've mentioned, we are working in all, basically, all continents, on all continents. But I myself, actually, I'm the co-lead of the Green Entrepreneurship Program at Adelphi, and our focus is clearly on Sub-Saharan Africa. So we are working a lot here in Eastern Africa. I myself will also go to Lilongwe on Saturday to conduct some activities there, because we also have quite a focus on Southern Africa. But also different regions apply here. So can we go to the next one, please? Oh. This is actually our theory of change. I think it's difficult to read, but maybe just to summarize briefly what we do at the Green Entrepreneurship team at Adelphi. I think I mentioned it already. We do provide business development services through local partners, so We have actually also hubs in different countries, mainly in Sub-Saharan Africa, where we engage local partners who then support entrepreneurs on the ground, and we also have an award scheme where we award green entrepreneurs and have a lot of track record in this area. Maybe you have also heard of the SEED initiative. This is also implemented by Adelphi. That has turned 20, so we had the 20th anniversary last year. But apart from these, what also Victor mentioned, capacity building, which is, I think, crucial really for green entrepreneurs to scale. We also work on the interface with financial institutions, so access to finance is an important topic. We are also seeking to support and to promote in the countries we work in. We also do work with policymakers, of course, and other ecosystem actors in order to make, basically, to lobby for green entrepreneurs, because I think there's a lot of talk about, when it comes to business and climate, there's a lot of talk about the big corporations, how they need to change their business models in order to become more sustainable. But I think also in the international debate, it is often forgotten that there are like the small enterprises that actually make up, they make up about 80–90% of the economy worldwide. And I think it's important to see that there are green entrepreneurs who, like, from the outset have a green business model, and they are really require a lot of support to scale, also to scale their impacts. We're also supporting the enterprises to track impact. So also, like Victor mentioned, I think impact tracking is an area that will become more and more important, especially when it comes to finance. Of course, the financiers also want to know where the money goes and where it's used for. So that's basically the summary of what we are doing at the Green Entrepreneurship team at Adelphi. Can we go to the next one? Yeah, so this was it. And then I'm handing now over to Victor again for the introduction to the project, and then I'm looking forward to the breakout sessions to engage in more like in-depth discussions with all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. So I will, great. Make it stronger than that, you know, when you, so Julia, that means you are welcomed again and again when it's done twice or more. Okay, let's go to the presentation on the project and the work packages. And I want to, what I need to talk to you about is really what the project is designed to be and what it is envisaged to deliver. And this is supposed to now give you a better insight when you go into group works. You will be guided on which thematic areas you will speak to. But I just wanted to start by saying that the project that we have designed is kind of an innovative, multi-sector, multifaceted approach to tackling climate change through a market-based initiative. What that means is that we will be working with many stakeholders. We will be working with many enterprises. We will be working with the public sector. We will be providing not only one type of support, but 2 or 3 of them that are combined. We will be trying to catalyze the thinking and the mindset of the climate change and the investment sector to be able to promote more of small and medium enterprises as opposed to having a lot of discussions around established enterprises. So, for example, in Kenya, the next slide, all of us probably know that approximately 80% of the private sector are SMEs in Kenya. So that is important. And that is important because what it means is then SMEs then create more jobs as opposed to the few established enterprises that we are looking at. Yeah. And if you continue to dig it further, that is not very different from Uganda. For example, in Uganda, can we show that slide? For example, in Uganda, 90% of the private sector is SMEs. So we can say, generally in East Africa, 80 to 90% of the private sector is SMEs. So if someone was asking why we are targeting the SMEs, then that is part of the reason, because that is where we want to see the greatest impact, and that is where we can achieve the greatest impact. The other aspect of it is that SMEs are largely underserved by conventional capital providers. So, you know, if you went to a bank, for instance, you'd find SMEs, yes, they access loans, but you'd also look at the extent to which the bank loans are defaulted. It is largely SMEs. Yeah. Now, you'd also look at the total value of loans that are actually accessed. SMEs actually access very small ticket sizes, and so the largest value of lending actually goes to established enterprises as opposed to SMEs. So those are some of the things that we think with this project we can be able to change. Now, I earlier spoke about the ticket sizes, and so this is a big problem. Even us as KCV today, we are still an early stage fund. When we go to raise money, the question is usually, KCV, how much money can you absorb just after 7 years of operation? So sometimes we lose out to raise big money because we are just 7 years old. That same problem is with the SMEs, because sometimes they don't raise more money just because they are tagged as small and medium enterprises. You know, that notion alone does not give them an advantage in the market. And so they need to be supported to be able to catalyze more by building their capacity and providing them with more concessional capital that can help them develop their track record. So that's part of the reason why we are targeting SMEs. And then, the questions around missing middle. So this is, I think this is an important phrase for all of us, but it has also been used again and again without specifically defining what it really means in our context. In our context, it means addressing the financing gap for SMEs. That's what it means under this project. And the financing gap for SMEs is not only as a result of ticket sizes, it's also as a result of SMEs are the worst affected by climate change. And more so if they are operating in sectors like agriculture, energy, water, forestry. And so the need to support them is immense because they face too many challenges before they actually begin to grow. And there is need for somebody to handhold them. And most of the players who are in this room today are already doing that, but we need to scale it. That's what this project is talking about. We need to catalyze more support that can be able to scale the growth of SMEs, increase the number of jobs that they create, catalyze more market systems for them, crowding in more suppliers, and then contributing to an improved market system. That is what the program is entirely talking about. Now, adaptation SMEs are higher risk. So maybe in the room there could be people who are heavily affected by climate change. You are doing your business, but then in addition to the normal business risks that would be assessed by a financier, the next step of your risk profile is the fact that a financier thinks that you'll not be able to service your loan, because there is a likelihood of a prolonged drought, you see. So you miss out on a facility that you would have accessed just because in addition to the normal business challenges and risks, you have an additional one, which is drought. So how do we ensure that the lenders in the market, and I will talk about it later again, appreciate the fact that as a result of climate change, drought has become a factor that we need to consider when evaluating SMEs and other enterprises for financing, so that it does not become the reason why the interest rate has to go high, but it becomes the reason why we need to support SMEs more to be able to overcome such challenges. So that's part of what the program is addressing. The next one, the next slide. So we are seeking then to address the user ability to understand and respond to climate risks. So you as private sector enterprises, the banks as the financiers, other impact investors and the stakeholders in this room should be able to use the information and the occurrences that are related to climate change to be able to prepare well to address the markets. And of course, as we know, drought is not going to go away, because just after a season of drought, there are floods, right? And businesses will have to continue. So we have to adapt our market systems in a manner that makes that part of what we consider when we are designing our projects and when we are delivering on our enterprises. So that's one area that this project will not ordinarily just look at the usual business development growth services. It will also look at how does climate information then embeds into the work we deliver as BDS service providers. And that's why we have you in the room. And we need your contribution so that we can see how to adapt this further. And of course, we have talked about climate resilience. And for me, the most important thing, and for us, the most important thing is that we need, with this project, to provide a market-based solution to contribute to climate resilience. That is the most important thing. As KCV, we are an impact investors. We are teaming up with other partners who are not necessarily in the commercial industry, but what we are ensuring is that can there be a multi-stakeholder market-based approach that can sustainably address access to capital and other support for SMEs, so that we are able to access the products and services that they offer in a long-lasting manner. And long-lasting can be the number of years that you want to define. So that's what this project is actually addressing. The next slide is about sectors. And while we understand the fact that we need to operate in more sectors. So, you know, Adelphi presented, they are a multi-sector agency. KCV, we are working in 5 sectors. UNIDO, it's industrialization across, you know, several sectors. We think that with the information that is available for both Kenya and Uganda, while we have water, agriculture, and energy, we will also need to address the nexus around the other sectors that are supporting entrepreneurship and growth of SMEs. But then the core will be the 3 that we have indicated. So if you are a business development service provider, you do not really have to change to offer, you know, very sector-specific support. What is important is that the services that you provide actually align to strengthening the capacity of SMEs to be able to do business, and be able to do business in a manner that they are resilient to climate change and be able to do better business. So as you discussed during group works, our expectation is that you should be able to interrogate what we have indicated here and say, okay, while you are saying that, we also think XY is also important to focus on. And as Lynette said earlier, we are positive to include your recommendations in this final document, because the end game that we are looking at in October is actually to bring this project home. And home is not only Kenya, it's Kenya and Uganda. Right? The next one is about the theory of change. So we have highlighted very key factors around theory of change, you know, impact level, outcome level, and activities. And I just want to touch on the impact level. And what we are saying is large-scale deployment of technologies, products, and services. So we are not going for a small intervention. We are not going for support for one part or 2 parts of the country. Yeah? We are looking at Kenya in totality, and we are looking at Uganda in totality. And we are building a platform on which we will go regional when this project becomes successful. So the impact that we have stated there is to actually multiply efforts of both private and public sector to be able to ensure that we are accessing relevant technologies, products, and services, which in other slides we have defined as solution. So our perspective is that we need to provide a package of solutions to our clients. KCV's clients are the private sector. I think this has... KCV's clients are the private sector. And your clients are also the private sector, and the private sector's clients are the communities where we come from. Individuals who access products and services that need to prepare them to be ready and be resilient to climate change. So that is important for all of us. And that's why we are talking about technology, products and services. And of course we are talking about climate resilience. Climate resilience is an example
One, two, one, two.
better so that we are able to have better service provision. So that's one of the areas that we will really discuss during group works. But generally, this component is looking at how do we coordinate ourselves better in a manner that does not duplicate our roles. And also this is where the oversight of the project will be anchored. So that is important for us, because we need to do that. In the morning when KEPSA, the representative from KEPSA was giving the speech, he said that the most important aspect of delivery is how we are able to work together to be able to deliver not only for the private sector, but also for the public. And most importantly, that needs to be coordinated. We are aware that there are a number of programs that are already doing that kind of coordination, but is it possible to interrogate what gaps are there and how we can strengthen it and where we can anchor this program? Now, the next one is just the fact that when we have a proper coordination platform, that is where the oversight of this project will actually be. Yeah, so Delphi will be in there, UNIDO will be in there, you will be in there as stakeholders who are driving this. And as part of the discussion today, we should be able to, just come forward and say during the group discussions that for follow-up discussions around this particular component, there are already stakeholders who are feeling that they want to be part of that coordination platform, and that even before we complete the entire structure, they can give more insights as to how this is going to work and how this needs to work. And we'll include that in the proposal as a final one, and then firm it up during the inception phase. The next slide is about component 2, which is catalytic adaptation financing facility. So I just want to put it clear that we are not going to apply the grants that we get out of this project for direct funding. We are not going to do that. So KCV is not going to get this money and then on-lend it to private sector companies. But we are going to apply the grants to be able to catalyze private sector and commercial investment into the SMEs. And so we have areas where we think this can be useful. For example, if we build capacity of the SMEs to be investment ready and then use this kind of money to be able to broker actual investments on their behalf and enable them to access capital, that is a better way to use grants as opposed to directly lending grants to private sector, because we also do not want to distort the market as well. We want to catalyze private sector investments into the market. That is one approach. The other approach is if we can provide incentives to commercial lenders to be able to target adaptation SMEs as a critical part of their portfolio. Right. So for example, if we are working with a bank and we agree with them that if you invest or lend into 30, adaptation enterprises, this is the kind of SME, this is the kind of incentive that we will provide to you. Either a guarantee scheme or an incentive scheme, cover part of your costs or reduce your transaction costs in a manner that will make capital affordable to adaptation enterprises. That is how we can catalyze the market. So even as private sector enterprises who are here, it should be very clear that this project is not meant to directly give you money to go and do business, but it is meant to facilitate you to get more competitive capital in an affordable manner so that you can continue to do your business over the 5 years that this project will be and beyond. So that is how the catalytic, adaptation financing facility is currently designed to work. You are free as the participants to this workshop to tell us, okay, KCV, you need Adelphi, you have been thinking about this, but we also think that there should be some direct monetary support, even if it is not for investment. So you are free to put that when you are discussing this component. And the court that will be discussing this should put into consideration that the whole idea of this project is not to distort the market. We are not going to crowd out commercial lenders. We are going to work with commercial lenders to provide affordable capital and business development services for adaptation SMEs to thrive. That is the main objective here. The next slide. So the next slide proposes, some of the mechanisms. It's not all, but some of the mechanisms that we have been thinking about. If you think about blended financing mechanisms, you could be talking about a partial repayment scheme, probably as SMEs has accessed loan facilities and, normally they are given a grace period, but during that grace period, they need to service interest and probably they are not ready to service that yet. Can we have a package that helps them address that prior to being ready to service? That is just an example. We have also, proposed guarantee schemes. We have also proposed origination cost incentives. So if the project is still under review and they need to incur certain costs to be able to be ready for private sector investment, how does this project then support them to be able to do that? Those are aspects of investment readiness that we think if we address, then we will have catalyzed the market. Then, of course, I spoke about the performance-based incentives. At what level do we do this? Do we cover collateral? Do we cover certain cash flow gaps? Do we cover certain due diligence and loan preparation costs? Do we do performance-based payments based on which private sector, players are actually providing actual capital to the SMEs? All these proposals are not new to our market. But what we are trying to do is to provide a package of solutions that can support the adaptation SMEs. These packages sometimes are accessed by all SMEs. As we are aware, during COVID, the banks introduced certain guarantee schemes and things like that. But are we deliberate about the adaptation SMEs? That is the biggest question. Are we deliberate about the adaptation SMEs? To what extent does climate change inform the level of incentives that are provided, or the extent to which the guarantees are formulated and delivered? So that is how deliberate we want to be with this. The next slide is about, and Julia already spoke about it earlier, that we want to work with the local financial institutions, the banks and the microfinance and the other lenders, in a manner that supports them to be able to properly assess climate risk, co-plan on their investments, and put together a way of mitigating those risks along with the SMEs. So, others may think of it as this is going to be a radical, shift in the way our banks have been operating. But we are glad that even as we speak today, prior to this, we have had consultations with individual banks, and they're already having products which are beginning to address this kind of concerns. And that what we need to do is just to strengthen their capacity to be able to do more and reach a wider scale. And if you remember, our impact level statement at the theory of change was that we want large scale. We want to have large scale technologies, services, and solutions accessible to both SMEs and also our clients. So we have to do more with the partners that are already lending. We cannot assume that we will then come and provide services in a parallel manner that does not recognize that there are also stakeholders who are existing in the market. And the whole idea is that we have got to be deliberate about adaptation SMEs. That's what this program is focusing on. Other SMEs can benefit, they are benefited, but how many of those are particularly and in a focused manner addressing climate resilience at the grassroots level and are enabling their client to be a lot better when climate change events strike. That is what we are proposing. And that is what has gone through the concept stage. I think we have now gone through, just to let you know, we have gone through, for the last 1.5 years, we have gone through 3 stages of approval. And we are saying that, we need to expand this scope of thinking and co-creation, yeah, and also get your contributions into this. Because if we get this approved in October, right? When we come back, then we begin the inception phase. The inception phase is not for KCV, Adelphi, and UNIDO and Finding XY only. It is for all stakeholders that are doing something in climate investments, and that's why we are here today. Paul, I think that is what was expected of me.
Thank you very much.
And if you allow me, I will take it back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victor, Julia, and of course the input that was made by Lynette. And I think now where we are at, we'll have a very brief moment for you to maybe just put through any clarifications or questions. The big discussions will be in the groups. That's where we'd hope us to go into. So I'll open the space for that.
1, 2.
But just before we get into that, I think the point that comes through from the project, it's about building climate resilience. And when we say resilience, which is really addressing the adaptation side of the story, what you're looking for is how do you enable, through the services that you're providing to that last person who's taking it on, whether it's through an SME, that you're building the capacity to not only cope, because first and foremost, climate change is happening. Whether we like it or not, it is happening. So where we are at is we're at a situation whereby, with or without, there's going to be climate impacts. So how do we enable those parties that are affected to be able to cope, first and foremost, yes, overcome, but even more importantly, thrive? Because otherwise, those stakeholders we are seeking, whether it is in agriculture or agri-related entities, there's a very good chance that there will be a collapse. So the purposes of the adaptation SME is as a conduit, as a channel, to help target that final client to be able to cope, overcome, and thrive in spite of the climate effects. That's where we're coming from. So as we think through this, we'll need to start thinking, how do we enable that? How do we move into that space? And how do we secure? By addressing the ecosystem challenges, because it's about all of us pulling in the same direction. And I think for me, the climate threat is a big enough issue to help us align our strategies so that whomever we are from the different angles, we can contribute towards securing resilience. And that's where some of this is coming from. So I'll open it up briefly, just for maybe 1 or 2 questions or comments. I'd rather clarifications so that we can then be able to get some feedback from those who have just spoken. Let's have the microphone. We have one person here. Then we'll go to the back there.
Maybe mine is just a point to reflect. Maybe we may not necessarily respond to it now. Maybe it's just something to reflect, because as throughout the discussion I was looking at what I would call the tenets of this proposal. So adaptation is key. You are calling it resilience, so that has to come out strongly. And then there is the aspect of support to early growth SMEs. I think that has also come out strongly. What I'm missing conspicuously is the aspect of gender and youth. And why I take that so strongly is because where I sit, we support a number of interventions. In the proposal, you see women and youth pronounced very well, but when it comes now to delivery of results, it becomes a challenge. There has to be a deliberate intervention and strategy around that area.
Thank you very much, Charles. I think as we, in our groups, that includes, that lens, that gender lens will be, towards the end there, will be a critical part of the conversation. So let us be conscious that when it comes to accessing finance and services, women-led and youth-led enterprises have a bigger challenge in unlocking that opportunity. So what then needs to be done as we think through this? What are the gaps? So those, wherever you are, your input in that regards will be very helpful. Yes, madam, please just introduce yourself as you ask your question.
Thank you, Paul. My name is Lydia Kimani. I'm a member of KEPSA, and I'm representing the agribusiness for African markets. My question, or rather clarification, is have you considered the digital lending? So you realize that has really grown, and especially is very popular with the SMEs, who tend to also be largely informal and find it very lucrative. And following the previous speaker's sentiments, women-owned enterprises, especially in agriculture, prefer this kind of lending. So has this dimension been built into the aspects of the financing facility? And then the other thing is that the project seeks to pursue a market-based approach. So the SMEs, yes, are 80%, but we are also 80% informal. So are there provisions to support formalization, promotion of self-regulation, and this particular SMEs? Because I think if that is missing, it will, to a large extent, compromise the effective implementation of the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, can I ask, do you want to say something to that?
So this is what I want to, in response to that, is that currently, I mean, the figure keeps changing, but there are around 7.4 million, both informal and formal SMEs here in the country. You know, the figure keeps changing. Sometimes it is 8, sometimes it is 6. But let's take it that, for now, we take it at around 7.4. And that's what constitutes the 80% that we spoke about. Now, about 3 to 4 million of them are formal. That means they have been registered with, I think, the laws that are there currently. You know, you are either registered as a business or a private sector company, or whichever formalization you receive. Our intention is to include both. And what will happen is that in the bracket, within the brackets of business development and growth support, we should be able to support these SMEs to formalize, because that is how they can generally interact with the market. Yeah, it is not only this project, but it is also the wider market. If there are possibilities to support them to formalize, that would be the way to go, however long it takes. But there are also those SMEs that, you know, sometimes it is said, there are those who would want to stay where they are for reasons that they know. Sometimes they think if it is formalized, then it's taxation and all these sorts of things. They want to stay where they are. So there should also be a mechanism to be able to support them to still continue to access catalytic financing at the level where they are. But what we want to promise the market is that formality is an important aspect, and we will strive to do that. We want as many SMEs as possible to be formalized, so that they are not only for this project, they should be able to interact with the wider market. For example, if a bank is, you know, targeting a specific, cohort of SMEs, they should be able to have the most basic requirements that a lender should be able to look for, and that we will support to do. In terms of, also Paul said, in terms of gender, we have actually one group that will be looking at gender, youth, and inclusion. And from that, we want to get more ideas on. The elusive factor has been that what Charles said, the proposal does it so well, but the implementation then tends to have a black shade around addressing these factors. So one of the things we are looking at is how practically can we support, this cohort, the youth and mostly women, without excluding, the others. So the focus will be there, and that is how we have deliberately titled the project, so that we don't lose sight of youth and women, and we know the barriers that women face in accessing capital and business growth support. We know the barriers that youth face to be able to access capital. So the mechanism is just, the best is that how do we practically structure it? How do we basically structure it to deliver that? And that's why you are here for us. Oh, digital, the issue of digital lending. So in, maybe if we had time, we would go back to the slide that we had on the regional coordination, on the appreciation around, digital lending. And this is what we think, that in the coming 5, 6, or 10 years, almost everyone would be able to access either lending services or business growth support services on a digital platform. And that is already happening now. So as we interact with stakeholders, one of the things that we are going to work with the financial institutions to be able to upgrade is the fact that we don't have to walk into branches for SMEs. I know they normally demand that, if you are an SME, you just have to come, we see you, we want to see the person we are dealing with. That is important, all right. But how can that track record then continue to improve in a manner that supports the digital lending space? This program, the incentives that we have spoken about, and I think Julia will speak this more in the group that is discussing the financial facility, is that we are going to deliver these incentives in a digital manner. So this program is going to be largely, if there is a business development support organization here, which is still like 80% physical in their delivery, I think this will now be the point that they need to consider with our support, working with them together, that how can we scale access to those services in a combination, optimal combination of physical and digital delivery. So that is an area that we look at. We have uploaded, I think we have uploaded the concept notes in the, if you can access it through the barcode and through the website, the detailed concept note that actually tells you the details around the components that we have discussed. And that should be able to guide you today or after this workshop, so that you see the details of what is in this program. And we will be able to upload another one when we conclude this process, and to be able to tell you this is the outcome of the workshop and everything else.
Is there any other one? Question, comment?
Yes.
Okay, please.
I'm Elizabeth Mwenda, Botanic Treasures, and I just wanted to get some clarification. It's just a few years that climate issues have come out full-blown. And for us who started a bit earlier, were largely ignored because it was not a need. And being in the space of useful trees, you're classified as the unresearched. Until now, when the government is saying, now I think we can include these people even in research by KEMRI. At this point, we are at the scale-up stage. This program is largely focused, I gathered, to startups. We need to scale up. We have proven our concept. We're in the market, we're in the shelves. Can we get your support to grow?
I think, let me have...
So thanks, and it's good to know, to make it everybody to know that that's Botanic Treasures, yeah? That's a KCV, a portfolio company. We started with them many years ago when they just graduated from the incubator and accelerator, that is KCIC, right? So we are looking at small and medium enterprises in their early and growth phases. And we are going to support these enterprises to be able to scale their activities in the market. So your stage of operation, your stage of business delivery now is not left out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I just want to mention, yes? Sorry? Oh, okay. Okay, please.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So I'm John Kabir, for the sake of those who were not in when I was giving opening remarks. So my question, I think, goes to the project, and the question is around whether, when we talk about equity, whether there are any key performance indicators already developed for equity. And when we talk about equity, maybe some of us, others might call it diversity, equity, and inclusivity. But I'd like to look at it from structural equity, procedural equity, and cross-generational and distributional equity, whether that has been factored in, and whether there are performance metrics, or that is something that we will be developing as we move on. Thanks.
Do I get, please.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that question. We have so far, I mean, as you have seen, we have just pointed out different options of financing mechanisms that we were thinking about. These are more loan focused, I would say, but we are not ruling out also using equity as a financial instrument. So I think this is also something we can probably discuss now in the breakout session, maybe also getting your opinions and your experience also with equity to see how we can factor it in maybe as another option. So basically with the catalytic finance facility, we are still a bit flexible at the moment. So we will not probably, even not in the full proposal, exactly define what we will apply, but we also want to take a flexible approach in implementation in order to see, okay, what is really taking off ground, and then going more into this direction, or maybe trying out something new. I think this is the beauty of this adaptation fund project, of grant projects, I think in general, that you have a bit of flexibility here. And we can see what actually works, and we will also have two subsequent cycles of financing for SMEs, for adaptation SMEs. So we will also have the chance to evaluate after the first cycle and then see what works in order to then shape the second cycle accordingly. But yeah, definitely keen to look into equity options as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Julia. And just to mention, when it comes to matters inclusion, let us say that also in the gender group, these are the kind of inputs we'll be hoping to get. All right, because you're qualifying the proposal further. All right. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Utsav, and I'm part of the climate change team at Intellicap, a development consulting firm. We do a lot of work on capacity building, enterprise support, and carbon markets as well. So my question is specifically regarding the catalytic financing facility. Does it have the flexibility to also incorporate voluntary carbon markets and carbon financing to be able to reduce the burden not only on the entrepreneurs, but also the project financing as a whole? So I would love to understand and discuss that with interested people. Thank you.
Just pass it over to Julia. She can speak from where she is.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, we haven't planned of including it, but I mean, we are open. This is also why we have this consultation workshop today, to get your views, your expertise. So when you're coming in with your expertise on carbon markets, definitely something to discuss. I think at some point, of course, maybe also to mention that we need to set a focus. I mean, we cannot do everything. We cannot do formalization of small enterprises and then also help the ones that have grown more to access finance and do carbon markets and so on. So I think just to mention this, I think there are so many good approaches out there, but I think at some point, I mean, we have $5 million US, just to put it down to the number. So we have to set a focus at some point. But this is really a forum today to see what is working, where's the expertise in the ecosystem, and then to see where to set that focus.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. And maybe just to add on to that, can you remember, oops, okay, that's all right. Okay, fine. Kindly remember that there's also other actions and interventions that are ongoing. So for instance, when it comes to incubator stage, startup level, there's already funding regimes that are there under KCIC, for instance. So there's that stage of an entity that can actually go get that formalization support. So you can have startups coming under the agribiz initiatives, then you can get supported along that. What's important is to pick the early stage and early growth and the growth stage SMEs, because that's where you're talking about the scale-up story. That's really where we are at, okay? Because ultimately, the ambition is that you want to see the large-scale adoption. That's large scale. So it's really it's at the next level. So the innovation side is still part of it, but you need to be at a stage where your impact will be to roll out, to take that story that you're engaged in, the solution that you're providing to the next level. So I think that's where we are at. Is there any other question? Okay, we'll need to start winding up. Lunch is, tea is ready. So where's the mic, please? So we'll have 1, 2, give Robert 1, and then that 3. Okay, one last one. All right.
Hello. My name is Jeff Temba from Samawati Capital Partners. You spoke about the national coordination platform and wanting the participation of organizations in it. I just want to understand that a little bit better. Like, what kind of organizations? What's your criteria for organizations that might want to participate, and in what sense? Thank you.
You want to give Julia?
Yeah, thanks. Do I have to move?
I'm sitting on this side.
Okay, hopefully now it works. Sorry for that. Yeah, thanks for also digging into the first component. I think we haven't talked about it that much yet. So there, I mean, we seek quite a broad representation because there are different activities, or basically all the project activities they should give strategic advice on. So the idea is to, for instance, have, of course, the financial sector represented in order to see then for the catalytic finance facility as well, when we then start really designing the instrument itself, to then have also FIs in the room and then really co-designing it with them, because I mean they are the ones that will then use it. So it makes sense, I think, from the very beginning to involve them. But same thing for the other components. So we would also, of course, like representation by vulnerable groups to also see their points of view, how we can also maybe shape the selection criteria to select the adaptation SMEs. There we would also like to gather intelligence from that group, policymakers. I think it all has to be anchored at some instance also in the policies. So yeah, very broad representation, and I mean, so far there are no like criteria to like which organizations we're going to take up. I think it's going to be based on interest, and then also we need to define further the roles and what type of mechanism we are using to convene these stakeholders. And here maybe to mention again, we would really like to also use again like local structures that might already be there. So maybe there is already some kind of forum that we can piggyback on, and then use it and add our concerns to that forum. So that's the idea so far. But happy also to discuss now. There's one specific breakout session on the national coordination platform.
Okay, thank you. Let's have Madame Roba. Can bring this side. Yeah, but just to add on to what Julia said, ultimately you want to create a platform which is addressing the ecosystem challenge. That place where the different stakeholders and actors are not in harmony, because that misalignment is part of what prevents these things from moving forward. So you want to convene a platform that secures that there is that interaction between critical actors who can take the story forward. Some of it will be of a policy nature. Some of it will be of a financial and capital nature. So you want to say, and even those targeted groups, you want them to be represented in that context so that you can then have this collaboration to generate, because what you want is ultimately the input that is coming from this particular project, remember, will not go to actually fund the project, the SMEs themselves. They will be building on what is existing in the marketplace. So you want to unlock those resources. Part of what is preventing that from happening could be a policy provision. It could be the way, the informality of some of the SMEs that we're talking about. So you want to create a space where that conversation can take place. And then collectively, you can push a narrative that takes us to the next place. Thank you very much. Okay, we had, yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Lida Muthika. I'm a green finance expert. So my question is, why the $5 million? Why are you applying for $5 million? And you're targeting SMEs who you have correctly said they represent 80–90% of our private sector in Kenya and Uganda. And you're also hoping to scale. So how much will the 5 million be able to achieve in 5 years, growing that you're looking to scale the finance for the SMEs? Number two, you're looking to catalyze private sector investment. And just thinking about the FIs, and I've worked in a bank in Kenya, if you have to incentivize them to fund the SMEs, they'll be looking at how can they benefit. So how many SMEs will they be able to serve with that kind of fund for a period of 5 years? Yeah.
Allow me to stand. My name is Marisi Onyango from Royal Media Services. So I would just like to get a clarification. What is the communication strategy? Because I believe this project is targeting an ordinary mwananchi, if I may put so. So what is the communication strategy? Are you partnering with any media house at the moment? Because most of the time we have great projects, and then the key people probably to benefit don't get to learn about it in good time. And then the other question, are there particular counties, let me say in Kenya, that you are rolling out the project, you're starting to roll out the project, or it's just random pick? Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's have, I'm just picking all the questions, so Julia and Victor, be on standby for the specific responses you may want to give. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm Barak Kodeko. I'm with Sun Buckets, and my question is, I presume that this is going to get to the implementation stage, and my question goes, what is the policy for the registered, will registered startups with no operational history be considered? Then on another question, on to the next, I'll ask that can an organization or an SME be awarded more than one, and can an organization submit 2 EOIs for 2 different projects to a call for request for the grant? Thank you.
All right. I think before I give them both Victor and Julia, maybe just to say, on matters size, every window, every call has its own limitations, its provisions. All right. But before I say that, how many entities here are either impact investors, venture capital? Could you kindly just stand, please? Kindly. Those are financial institution, impact capital. Okay. All right. Banks, yes. All right. Yes, now this is where the money is. Well, just to put it in the sense that, thank you very much, please have a seat. The idea here is that the fund is catalytic and that there is commercial capital that's available. But the challenge is that that commercial capital cannot get to the targeted parties. First of all, it struggles with SMEs, but even more so with adaptation SMEs. So part of the facility is to help craft a mechanism that gives comfort to commercial capital impact investors to release their resources or to deploy their resources to support that kind of an activity. So the purposes of this event is in part to hear your own, what will make you comfortable? What will be that input that needs to be done? So that as we tweak the mechanism, yes, you saw the slide that Victor presented with the different blended finance, performance-based. How then does it work? What would be the role that that facility can provide? And probably even the DPs here, the development partners, the input is also because it's a grant-based engagement, all right? So you'd like to see, is there a way you can also crowd in, yes, resources from development partners who already have programs that are probably relevant, but they're looking for mechanisms to prove. So in a sense, this may end up being a proof of concept, which will then unlock to more people the resources. So that's probably where we start. But I would probably want to ask Julia, maybe you can make some comments, partly on the issues, whichever, communication or even this particular one. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll start and then I pass on to Victor. Specifically the county question, I think you're better fit to answer. Maybe just on the 5 million, I think you already said it. Actually, we are submitting this proposal under the innovation window of the Adaptation Fund, which is a quite new financing window. And we have also experienced now in the concept note phase that the Adaptation Fund they want innovation, but they're also still a bit shy or still a bit careful about it. Because I think also these market-based approaches that we are proposing, they're a bit new to the Adaptation Fund. I think like the usual Adaptation Fund project that you will see on the website, they work a lot like in one specific area of a country, targeting then a very specific group of people, and usually not necessarily applying market-based approaches, but rather like conventional development approaches. So I think this is something new for the Adaptation Fund. I think they like what we are proposing. I think they see also that there is sense in it to involve the private sector more. They're still a bit careful, as I would put it. So I think we have to convince them more during implementation. So once we see, this is taking off ground, this is really working, then I would assume that there's also possibility of maybe scaling up the budget, maybe extending the project even, to include more SMEs in that sense. So that's maybe on the first question. Then communication strategy. We have not yet identified a certain partner to work with. I think this will be something that we will figure out in inception phase. But what is maybe important about communications, as you were also mentioning, that it's crucial that the messages arrive at the right stakeholder groups, and I think this is specifically the adaptation SMEs we are looking for. We are also wanting to apply for our programs, and since also Victor said it already, we are targeting the whole country. Of course, that's also kind of a challenge, and that's also why we have one specific working group today, where we would also get your insights on how to do this. So how to have this outreach also to more rural areas, to areas that maybe not have that much access to incubation, acceleration services yet, and also, of course, access to finance may be more scarce there. So we are really digging into also new areas. So we would like to collect some ideas also in that working group to see how we can do that communications outreach. I think that's a crucial point, because I mean, in the end, the project can only work when we have the right pipeline. I think enterprise support, access to finance is always about pipeline, and we have to build that adaptation SME pipeline in a good manner. So yeah, maybe handing now over to Victor.
Yeah, I think you have actually addressed the question you wanted me to about the, the region, the counties, and everything else. I think the most important thing is that we are addressing an underserved group in the market, and we are also addressing the underserved markets, right? So in terms of geography, we have not listed which counties, but we also want to be very context specific in how we spread the geography. We will not leave out any county because of the challenge that Julia is saying. Pipeline is one factor, but the other factor is also inclusivity. The major principle for this project is to be as inclusive as possible. The factors of inclusion are about gender, are about geographies, are about the models of enterprises, are about what solutions are being addressed, are about which type of communities and people are accessing this solution. So that is too spread, and I just see that it is entirely Kenya, because in Kenya we are very diverse and we need to address these communities and needs in a manner that makes them a lot more climate resilient. The same approach is also on the other side, Uganda. Yeah, so we do not want to limit. Julia said something important, that this is a unique, and it is the first time the Adaptation Fund is going to make a contribution to a private sector market-based approach to climate investment and climate resilience. So we really have to, do this in a manner that gives them an impression that we can scale, and scale in terms of how much money is available, and scale also in terms of regions in outside of Kenya. So the best fit together will make us convince Adaptation Fund during the implementation phase. At the proposal stage, with all these brains here already, I think we are landing somewhere, yeah? And with the questions that you are asking and the contributions you're making, I think we are landing somewhere. But the biggest fact would be around implementation. And how do we, every time we go for workshops, and Paul would say this better, there's always a cry out for, is there pipeline? Is there adaptation pipeline that can really absorb money? Yeah. At the end of 5 years, yeah, that is one of the things that we want to prove, that there has been pipeline, but very few people have taken positive steps to prepare them well to access the money. Yeah. So the pipeline is, lying somewhere with certain qualities that are not appreciated by the market, but we can lift them up. An example is recently I shared, right now at KCV we have a pipeline value of around 24 million USD pipeline value. So out of that is around 60, 70 enterprises. If you add to what KCIC is churning to us, what other incubators are churning to us, I don't think there is lack for pipeline, but is the pipeline ready, yeah, to absorb the kind of money that they are expected to? No, there is a gap. And that is the gap that we want to address. So if we address that gap, definitely there will be more demand for money, and we can go back and say, look, private sector can do more in climate change. And that's what we are looking up to. So we have to be as inclusive as possible to be able to demonstrate that. And inclusion is also about you. Because we can't bring you to this room, let's be honest, we can't bring you to this room and then at the inception phase we tell you that the areas where you work are not areas where we are going to work. We should have figured out that long time ago, right? Yeah, so that is part of what we have to address going forward. I know there are people who have come from very marginalized markets, people who are operating in the refugee markets, for instance, yeah, that we still need to address with this. So we need your mind on how best. I think the question is here is how best. What we need to achieve is clear, yeah, but how best can we make sure that we have maximized on the kind of impact that we are going to get? And it's market-based, so that is just bottom line, that we are introducing something new to Adaptation Fund, market-based, private sector.
Thank you very much, Victor and Julia, for those quick responses. Now, I request we close at that. You will have those discussions when we get into the groups, right? And yes, in just in a moment. In a moment, somebody will come here now to give us the directions. how we'll be split into the groups and where the groups are. So Kennedy will be giving us that feedback just now. Kennedy, just approach. So thank you very much for this. My hope is that the interactions continue at the group level. We did not do the introduction at the beginning because there was quite a number of us who had not been here in time. But I'll request when you get to your respective groups, can you kindly introduce yourselves amongst your group? Let's start there, and then we'll continue interacting. Your question may not have been fully answered, but we do have somebody who can be a friend of yours. Murabula, could you kindly stand up, please? That's the CEO, KCIC. He has a program on agri-biz that is supporting non-operational, what you used, yeah. So there's opportunities there. He's the CEO of KCIC, Kenya Climate Innovation Center, which is like the mother of KCV. Yes, so thank you very much. So please, chase him at lunchtime. Thank you very much. Kennedy?
Thank you so much, Paul. That was quite an engaging session, and I hope all of us have been able to learn one or two things. I know you are so tired, you really want to stretch, and this is that moment for stretching. Now, I have a few announcements to make. To those who came in a bit late, and you have a name tag, probably you realize that there is no program before you on your table. Now, you will need to scan the barcode on your name tag. There's a barcode. You can access the internet using the Wi-Fi password on your desk. Then you can be able to scan. Again, you don't need to have a barcode scanner for that purpose. You can just use your photography app on your phone to scan. That said, you realize that your name tags have different colors of the lanyard, the tag. Okay? So the purpose for that was to be able to have to group us into the breakout sessions. So those who have blue tags or blue lanyards will fall under Regional Coordination Platform group. Those with the green, and to those who don't have name tags totally, listen to these groups, then at the end of my announcement, you can choose one. If you don't have if you've not made a choice, we can help you to choose at the very end. Now, blue, Regional Coordination Platform. Green is Catalytic Finance Facility and Investment Brokerage Services. Then yellow tags will be Gender and Youth Inclusive Investing. Lastly, the red will be Ecosystem and Direct Enterprise Support. There are some who have white. I know they're wondering, where do we fall? So if you have white and you don't have any tag, pick between, among the four colors that I've just mentioned. And again, if you have a problem choosing, we will help you choosing. Just remain in the room, and then we'll assist you to choose one group to be in. Now, in terms of the breakout rooms, the green tags will remain in this room. The blue tags will go to Baobab 2, and we have Mercy, one of my colleagues. Mercy is just standing behind there. We'll show you where Baobab 2 is. It is in this floor. And then the red, we will go to Baobab 1, and we have Krishna, also standing behind there. He will show you where Baobab 1 is. Again, that room is in this floor. Yellow will move to Zambezi 2, should be in the next floor. You'll just pick the stairs, and Nancy, standing right behind there, should show you where Zambezi 2 is. Another announcement, again, to those people who came in a bit late, probably you're trying to locate the washrooms. They are right ahead out of the exit. You get the gents and the ladies on your left. These workshop is being streamed live on KCV YouTube channels, as well as Facebook page, under the hashtag Climate Adaptation Workshop. So you can also just say something and then tag KCV, Adelphi, and UNIDO in your post. As you're stepping out to the breakout sessions, you will be able to pick some snacks and some drink just out there. And kindly pick your drink and move with it to the breakout room that I've just announced. Very well. So I just mentioned that tea will be served out there. Self-service, pick a tea and move with it to your room so that we can save on time. Now again, the colors, we have blue. You can see the tags on your neck. Yeah, on your neck. It's serving two purposes. One, it gives you, if you can scan it, it gives you the program, the concept note for this workshop. It gives you a summary of this project. It is all there. Number two, the color on it should tell you which room you will go to. So if you are having blue, you'll be in Baobab 2. And Mercy will show you where Baobab 2 is. If you're having green, you remain here in this room. I will show you where this room is. I'll be here to show you where it is. If you have yellow, you will be in Zambezi 2, just the next floor. And Nancy will show you where Zambezi 2 is. And red will be in Baobab 1, the same floor. Krishna, standing behind there, will show you where Baobab 1 is. If you don't have any tag, and if you have a white tag, those two categories, white tag and no tag, remain here. We will show you where to go. But again, if you've chosen a room based on the topics, you can just proceed to that room. Thank you so much. And I don't know whether, Victor, you want to say something? Okay. So, Paul? Yes. Very well. I'm having to talk about it. Okay. Very well. So in the next, like 2 hours thereabout, So 12:45, let's all be here, and kindly let's keep time so at least we can get lunch when it is still hot. I wish you a very good discussion.
The world is in dire need for water, a natural resource that is getting scarce day by day. The global population surge that increases demand for the product worsens the situation. Termed by many as the bedroom for many Kenyans who work within the Nairobi city, Ongata Rongai is one of the areas experiencing water scarcity. The busy roads every morning and evening clearly demonstrates how this population is steadily growing, resulting in high demand for water. Many of the residents access water through boreholes and water vendors. Due to the ongoing drought, water levels have significantly gone down as the demand increases with the population. This has seen some homeowners with domestic boreholes start commercializing the commodity. Some of the challenges faced by the residents are increased cost of water, which has seen them pay higher amounts than normal.
Unapata like ile mshahara kidogo umepata katika ile biashara, unatumia pesa mingi sana kununua maji. Salon tunauziwa mtungi kama 100. Katika hiyo 100 ukiangalia hata maybe umepata client mmoja kwa watu wa salon, kwa watu wa vinyozi, amekulipa 100 bob. Hiyo 100 bob ndio umenunulia. Sasa umetumia blow dry, umetumia vitu mingi sana. Please, county government ya Kajiado, county government ya Ongata Rongai, tunaomba tafadhali mtuangalie katika hili swala. Tunaumia sisi kama wananchi.
Stacy Adhiambo, a resident of Rongai, narrates how the water charges have increased over the last few months.
So recently, the prices were increased in our apartment, to be specific, and it was inconvenience because now we had to look for other ways to get the money to pay the bill, because we also have other bills to pay, and the budget is a little bit, the economy how it is.
Climate change has greatly contributed to this situation. Water pollution and poor management of water resources has greatly led to the scarcity, affecting the country's economic activities. The Kajiado County Ward Administrator acknowledges the current water situation majorly caused by drought.
Currently, there's a global crisis born of global indicators of drought. Drought has been a problem, devastating most homes and affecting livelihoods. That being the case, county government of Kajiado is not different from other areas that are being affected by the drought. Remember, the county of Kajiado is an ASAL county where we are having arid and semi-arid environments and a mix-up.
Ombogo says that the blame should not be put on the county government, but drought that has resulted into drying up of water reservoirs.
We will not blame anyone for the loss, for the little levels of supply of water in Rongai. Like I said earlier, remember we are dam dependent in supply of water. So where the county government had reservoirs, you can be sure the hydraulic levels are low. So pumping of the same water could be an issue. You notice that people are complaining there is no water in the pipes, but the truth of the matter is there is no water in the reservoirs. If there is, it's little to associated with the pumping as it were before.
Residents who purchase water from the vendors have also cried foul over the hiked prices for water. Christine, who runs a grocery, recounts her predicaments.
Nafanya kazi ya green grocer. Shida yenye tunaye kabisa ni maji. Maji wanatusia bei kali. 20 liters wanauza 20 bob. Saa zingine tunanunua 10. Saa zingine tunanunua 35. Na mbeleni tulikuwa tunanunua 5 bob.
With majority expressing their plight, it is agreeable that there need some stringent measures to
I'm Elizabeth Mbogo Mwenda, a founder, Botanic Treasures.